Hello, my name is Chris and I'm a U-Haul hitch professional. Installing a stealth hitch on your Tesla Model 3 can lead to some amazing adventures, such as biking or camping. And with the towing kit, you can even tow a U-Haul trailer just about anywhere in North America. Now let's take a look at how we complete this install. You will need the following tools or supplies to complete this installation. We're going to begin by opening the cargo hatch so we can remove our taillights and then the bumper fascia. We're going to begin by removing this top plastic trim piece. There are 2 push pins that we can remove with a flathead screwdriver, one on either side. You can now pull back the liner and expose the taillight connection. Remove the red tab of the electrical connector using a flathead screwdriver. You can then remove the connector. You can now remove 2 fasteners with an 8mm socket. You can now remove the trunk stop from the tail light by simply turning it counterclockwise. We're now ready to pull the tail light rearward. For stubborn tail lights, try using your trim panel tool for added leverage. There are 2 posts roughly here and here that are holding it back. You can now repeat these steps to remove your passenger side tail light. You can now begin removing fascia fasteners, starting with 1 underneath each tail light using a 10mm socket. You can now remove 3 trim clips from the wheel liner behind the wheel using a flathead screwdriver. The third one is behind the tire and a little tricky to locate. Now peel back the wheel well liner, exposing 1 hidden fastener. The fastener is hidden inside here. You can remove it using a T25 Torx bit. You will find 2 10mm fasteners on the underbody panel behind each tire. Now repeat for the passenger side. We can now begin removing underbody fasteners. Some models will have 6, some may have 7. You will find 2 at the rearmost point of the vehicle, hiding behind these trim covers that you can remove with a flathead screwdriver. You will find 2 or 3 in the center section of the underbody panel, in our case 2, and the final 2 will be at the forwardmost end of the panel here. All these fasteners can be removed with a 10mm socket. We're now ready to remove the bumper fascia from the vehicle. You may want to grab a second set of hands to hold the bumper in case you have an electrical connection that's back there you need to remove. You may use blue masking tape along the body lines to prevent scratches when we return the fascia later. You can now begin gently peeling the fascia and popping all the clips that hold it in place. Work your way from the outside to a tail light and then jump to the other side. When you pull the vehicle's fascia, you may find this clamp nut come loose and fall out. Save it for reinstallation later. If your vehicle has the electrical sensor, you will find it connected here. Simply disconnect to remove the fascia. You can now remove the fascia and the still attached underbody panel. We're now going to temporarily remove this bracket. Use a 10mm socket to remove 5 fasteners. We're now going to release this adapter from the bracket so that we can hang it off to the side to complete the installation. Use a trim panel tool to pop it loose. You can now pop the bracket out of the vehicle body. And set it off to the side for reinstallation later. We're now ready to remove the factory reinforcement beam. There's going to be 5 or 6 fasteners, 3 on the driver's side and 2 or 3 on the passenger side. We're going to use a 15mm deep well socket and an extension to remove them. These nuts will not be reinstalled. You can now remove the reinforcement beam and set it aside for reinstallation later. You can now remove the 2 reinforcement beam base plates they will not be reinstalled. There are 6 fasteners, again using a 15mm socket. Save these nuts for reinstallation later. Note that the directions will call out the removing of factory sealant. If you have some that prevents the hitch from getting flush against the vehicle, remove that. As you can see, we do not have any, so we're gonna move forward. You can now place the provided nylon washers over the vehicle's bumper studs. We can now place the stealth hitch onto the vehicle and re-secure your outermost studs with the previously removed fasteners. We're now ready to torque the outermost fasteners to the manufacturer's specifications. I will link them in the description below. We are only doing the outermost bolts at this time. We're going to now determine which bracket is for each side so we can install it on the reinforcement beam. Make sure your 2 flange holes line up and that the notch is facing up. So this is our passenger side bracket. We're now going to install new hardware in the side plate for the factory bumper beam. Place a flat washer on the bolt first. Now pass the bolts through the back of the bracket. Take note how many bolts your reinforcement beam had. Ours only needs 2, the top and the bottom. If you had 3, you will place 1 here. Now place on 1 nylon washer for each bolt. Now place the bracket onto the reinforcement beam and secure using the provided flange nuts. Reaching in to install the flange nut can be difficult, so place the flange nut in your deep well socket. You can then reach in and loosely install it by hand. Now repeat for the driver's side bracket where we have 3 bolts. You can now place the reinforcement beam and the new brackets on the vehicle. Now secure it with the previously removed factory fasteners. Because there is excessive amounts of play in the bumper beam, we're going to make sure we center it on the vehicle before we tighten and torque this down. Use a measuring tape to help you determine the distance from the edge of the bumper beam to the edge of the hitch plate until we find center. In our case, 1 1/8 inch is exactly the same on each side. We're centered and ready to tighten and torque. You can now use your 15mm deep well socket as well as a 17mm open-ended wrench in order to tighten the reinforcement beam bolts to the manufacturer's specifications. Now tighten and torque the remaining fasteners. We are now ready to install the stainless steel latch block. Start by removing the rubber plug to retrieve the keys. Remove the nuts and bolts. Note that the keyed portion of the latch block will be on the driver's side of the vehicle and the rotation handle will be on the passenger side. If you are installing the receiver-only version of this, you can install the latch block now. However, if you plan to install the towing kit, we need to install the towing kit's provided safety chain hooks now. Place the safety chain hook over the handle and rotate it into position. Repeat for the driver's side, ensuring the safety chain hooks angle backwards. You can now install the stainless steel latch block, passing it between the plates of the hitch, making sure your safety chain blocks are outside of the plate of the hitch, and pass your bolts from the passenger side through to the driver's side. You can now install the provided nylock nuts. You can now tighten and torque the latch block hardware to the manufacturer's specifications that we will link in the description below. You will need a 15/16 socket as well as a 15/16 open-ended or box end wrench. The forwardmost bolt is close to the vehicle body. I found adding a short extension allows me to get my larger torque wrench in there. We can now reinstall the support bracket. You can now reinstall the previously removed electrical connector back into the bracket. We are now at the point where we can put the fascia back on the vehicle and reinstall all the fasteners if we're not going to install the wiring. For those of us who are going to install the wiring, we're going to want to continue forward for here. I'll go ahead and I'll link that video up above. To begin returning the fascia to the vehicle, you will want to make sure that this plastic flange on the underbody panel goes between this underbody panel and the metal cross member. Starting here will help returning the fascia to be easier. You can now lift the fascia into place. You will find it necessary to pull the fascia and stretch it into place. You can now reinstall all the fasteners. If your clamp nut came loose, be sure to reinstall it on the bumper fascia so that you can reinstall the torque bit. Your clamp nut will need to be placed on the fascia like so. However, it does not install well and can cut the fascia. So let's go ahead and push the fascia back and then install it. You can now replace the wheels trim and reinstall the 3 trim clips. Now reinstall your taillights and the interior trim. Be sure to push in the red locking tab. Return the carpeted liner to underneath the weather stripping. Finally finishing with the roof trim panel. Insert your 2 trim fasteners before we can fully seat the upper trim. You can now begin fixing the weather stripping and pressing this trim back into place. We are now ready to access our stainless steel latch block. If you do not have this factory knockout, you will need to trim the fascia before you return it to the vehicle. The instructions do have a pre-included template for you to use. For us, we just need a flathead screwdriver to loosen the tabs. Just 90-degree turn. You can now unlock your latch block by removing the cover to the keyed area. Unlock the latch block and put it into the unlock position. You can now rotate the handle to put the cam into the open position. You can now insert your accessory. You must now lock the accessory before using it. With our 2-inch receiver installed, we are now ready for our adventures. But when we return home, we must unlock the accessory and remove it. Turn the handle and remove the accessory. Please remember to always lock this accessory before using it for bike racks and cargo carriers, and remember that it is not rated for towing. If you purchase the towing kit, it will include a ball mount that fits. Remember to replace your rubber insert to protect your stainless steel block from dirt and debris. Now that the hitch is installed, we pull the vehicle onto level ground to show you some important measurements. This is a 2-inch hitch receiver accessory. From the pinhole to the end of the receiver is 2.5 inches. From the ground to the inside of the top of the receiver is 10.5 inches. These measurements will help you determine the necessary length, rise, or drop of your hitch accessories, like a bike rack or a cargo carrier. If you have any questions about the products seen in this video, or if you'd like to schedule an installation with your local U-Haul hitch professional, please visit us online at uhaulhitches.com. You can also download the U-Haul app using the link in the description for even more ways to manage your hitch and towing needs.